go. Let's go. All right, let's go. Let's go, y'all. What's up? Okay. All right, we should be good. All right, what's up, y'all? There we go. All right, we should be good. All right, let me know if you can hear me good. If you can hear me well. If you can hear me well. Greetings from William Faulkner, Cormac McCarthy territory here. I'm down south. I'm on a new laptop. So I hope it's working well. I hope you can hear me. Um, yeah, there we go. Good. You can hear me. Okay. And if I drop some frames here, just be patient with me because I'm working with the best internet I can. And I got this little baby dog right here next to me, my sister's dog. So greetings from down south with my sister's dog. And Merry Christmas to everybody. Merry Christmas. Tonight we're covering Cormac McCarthy's The Road. Okay, and screen still mirrors, so I got to work on that, you guys. But yeah, tonight we're covering Cormac McCarthy's 2006 novel, The Road. And greetings to everybody out there. Shouts out to all my homies. Shouts out to Jethro, Rat Splatigan, all my homeboys out there. Shouts out to Tatiana. Shouts out to all of my homeboys, homegirls out there. And shouts out to Jerry, who just did a great stream on his channel, Exposing Powerful Lies, live streams. So go and check that out if you haven't seen it. So earlier this week, I was going to read, well, I did read William Faulkner's The Wild Palms, and I was thinking about doing a stream on that, but I just decided to go ahead and barrel through with The Road by Cormac McCarthy, which I read in just a couple of hours this morning. I mean, it's an interesting book. And one thing about it is that this is the fourth Cormac McCarthy stream that we've done. We've of course done Blood Meridian. We did No Country for Old Men. We did The Passenger, and The Passenger, of course, you remember takes place partly in past Christian, down here where I am, down here on the Gulf Coast in Mississippi. So this one's an interesting one because it's in a nameless place, but it's obviously supposed to be. They are sort of trudging their way through Appalachistan down to the coast. And so what happens in the novel? Let's give a brief overview of the novel. So what happens is we have a father and son, and they are in the midst of, we don't know what's happened yet, but they are trying to survive. And we find out as the novel goes on that this is certainly a apocalyptic event that's occurred. It's really a post-apocalyptic dystopia. They are trying to make their way through essentially Appalachistan, across mountains, down to the coast, and they have to get to the sea, and basically it's just surviving. They just have to survive. That's the plot. What takes place in the meantime is certainly McCarthyite. It's dark, but one thing is that you compare this book to the film version, and the film version with Viggo Mortensen is horrific. I mean, so is the book. The book obviously is far more detailed and horrific. But one thing that really changed, that I really got from this book, is that it's positive. It seems to be a dark, completely negative, fatalistic, nihilistic book, but it's not really that. It has a lot of positive. It has a lot of positive things in it, and that's because the two characters are what they say is carrying the fire, and we're going to see what that means. It sounds like a bit of an elementary, almost a cliche, but it makes sense when you consider that it's the father telling his son. Now, the son, of course, was born into this. He was actually born into this tribulation. And that's the best way that I can describe the book, is a kind of a tribulation, because there's a lot of metaphysical language in the book, and it's like they're in the midst of this wasteland, this is like the end result of the postmodern dystopian, broken, fragmented wasteland. It's this book. It's sort of the end of all things in terms of the worldview of McCarthy, or in the postmodernist style. And there seems to be nothing sacred in the book. They witness a lot of horrible things, a bunch of horrific activities. But But because the book is written in the third person and we don't get names of the characters, it's just the man and the child. And the child certainly takes on the two characters are described throughout the book as there are a number of motifs throughout the book, but one of them is that they're constantly described as pilgrims. And the language of the man, the dad, is different from the way that the child or the son reacts. And in fact, he starts to sort of learn and take on a different worldview from his son. And his son is far more intuitive than we sort of give him credit for. We learn that you learn throughout the book that he's going to survive. He's going to make it, which is positive. Um, the spoiler, the man obviously does not survive, the dad. He makes it to the very end, and but his father figurehood is supplanted by another man who has a family and has other children. And we get indications throughout the book that they're being followed, and we sort of are always thinking that they're being followed by this blood cult. That's what they're called in the book, a blood cult. And so the story is kind of pitted really with the absence of um, any kind of traditional struggle or protagonist antagonistic role because there are just no people. And when they come across people, you when you read a book, you naturally you put yourself into the mindset of what would I do if I were in this situation, and you quickly take on the ambiance of this apocalypse, and you're like, if you come across people, do not do do not approach them, don't talk to them, they're gonna be bad people. And then what happens is we're introduced to the language of, are we the good guys? Yes, we're the good guys. And we learn what that means. And it means the things that you hope that it means. For instance, the bad guys in the book are truly bad guys. They are the worst. And that's why I sort of would put the language of the book and the worldview of the book in terms of this kind of post nuke, post Vesuvian, Pompeian ash world non civilization where people have completely turned into demons, and they are um, they are killing, roiping, and eating every other human being, even the children. And there are a couple of moments in the book where you think that this is going to be enough for the child's rite of passage where he will lose his innocence and grow up seeing with some of the things that he sees, which are the most horrific things. But it's actually the way that his dad reacts to some of the situations that really makes you understand that it's the way that he views his own father that kind of makes him lose his innocence. So let's dive into the book. Let's dive into some of the language of the book. I'm trying to mess with OBS here, and I've got this new computer, and so forgive me if the frames drop and if the volume cuts out. If you can just let me know in the chat, because now I can see the chat because I've got a newer version. So sorry for that. I know it's annoying, but again, shouts out to everybody here. If you want to support me, please hit the sub button. We're trying to get up to 2,000 subs now. Please share the stream. You can support me with PayPal, Cash App, Venmo. Of course, I can use your support always. I need your support. And you can also hit the super chat link down there. You can hit super thanks. And if you want to, you can drop $100 for a sponsored stream. Or if you want me to do a film, I'll do that. You can drop me $50. That being said, let's give a couple shouts out to some of our homies out there. Shouts out big time to our homeboy John Adams out there who dropped $100 fat super chat, and I'll be covering some of the Wes Anderson films coming up. Shouts out to our homeboy the real John Connor out there who helped me out a lot. Dropped a big fat super chat to help me out with my car because if you watched the Cotizi, the Church of the Eternal Logo stream that we did on It's a Wonderful Life and Christmas Carol a few days ago before Christmas, then you'll know what a pain it was for me to get down here and all of the cringe coin that I dropped on that. So you could really help me out with that. Shouts out to Vitali. I hope I got your name right. forgive my ignorance if I didn't, for, helping me with that 20 bucks for car getting fixed up. Those were those dudes dropped me those fat chats over the course of this weekend, this Merry Christmas weekend. Also, the next stream that we'll be doing, just before I get any further, is definitely gonna be the Facing the Crowd stream, and that is, for our homeboy. I've gotta do our homeboys Presley and Ryan. Ryan, I'm getting into, High Wind in Jamaica, and, and, I've got, like, 2 or 3 sponsor streams that I gotta get done. I'm also doing, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, the book by Quentin Tarantino. I'll also be doing coming up, I decided I'm gonna do, John Updike's The Witches of Eastwick, High Wind in Jamaica. I'm looking for more Cormac McCarthy books, and I'm trying to hit the bookstore tomorrow. If I can, I'm gonna get down to New Orleans. I'm only like an hour and something away from Nolans. So I'm gonna try to get down there to Nolans. Of course, again, I'm in Cormac McCarthy territory here, down here near past Christian. So right here on the coast. Got the beach right outside. But it's been mighty cold. And shouts out to everybody out there, especially our homeboy Jerry, who survived the polar vortex superstorm up there in Buffalo. And shouts out to our homegirl Kristen out there and all of our homies. So let's dive into Cormac McCarthy's The Road. So again, the book was published in 2006. McCarthy was pretty prolific in the 2000s. I mean, he did this, No Country for Old Men. That's pretty prolific for McCarthy. Of course, he didn't publish again for what 18 years, 16 years, and then of course 1985's 84, 85 Blood Meridian, which we've done. But The Road is interesting because the form of the book, I noticed there are a few allusions here, that we can draw while reading the book. One is it's obvious that he takes his cue from William Faulkner. And one thing that's interesting, again, it's the way that literature alludes to itself, the landscape of literature and the intertextuality, sort of everything builds on itself. And this book, The Wild Palms, that I just read, has two interwoven stories. One is it's actually called, if I forget the Jerusalem, the publishers made him change the title of the book, but one of the stories is called The Old Man, and one is called The Wild Palms. The Wild Palms is about basically a guy who takes a lover. She cucks her husband. She runs off with him. He's a doctor, and they are trying to exist in the broken modernity of a non-marriage relationship, and they do abortions and all this terrible stuff. But The Old Man is really interesting. Actually, Jay wrote an essay, an early essay on Jay, our homeboy Jay Dyer over there, JD at Jay's Analysis, wrote an essay on The Old Man, and that's interesting because it takes place around the 1927 flood in Mississippi, and you have a character. You have these convicts, and there's a tall man that's the old man, and then there's a shorter, squat guy who is basically the way that he's described is like Judge Holden in Blood Meridian. And what happens is they are sent out to work on the levees, and the levees are breaking, and the old man sort of gets away, but he's not trying to escape. He just floats away in this flood. You have the obvious biblical image of sort of a new flood. The world is just destroyed. All there's carcasses floating by the animals, and he finds this pregnant woman up in a tree, and he went to prison before he sort of knew love, but he went to prison because he was influenced by sort of pulp fiction dime store novels and bought a gun, an unloaded gun, robbed a store, was caught, and then sent to prison. And now his home has been prison. And he thinks of it sort of as a monastic existence. Well, he ends up being the only virtuous character in the book, really. And he saves the pregnant woman through this horrific hellscape. And then when he's finally caught by the warden and the guys, he says, "No, I wasn't." And they had written him off as dead, and they pardoned him because he was dead. But he says now they have a problem because they have to get him back into the system, and he's clearly not dead, and they're going to let him go. But then they're like, no, we're just going to add 10 years to his sentence and put him back into jail because he tried to escape. And he says, don't you understand? The last thing I want to do is escape. He wants to go back home to his cell monastic existence in on this prison work farm in Mississippi. Well, the reason I'm telling you this is because there's a lot in the book that ties into McCarthy, especially with the road, because in the road we don't necessarily have the hellscape of a blackened flood, but the flood or the blackness of the world, and it's a deep Stygian blackness, has been unleashed because we don't know why, but we do know that the air essentially has turned to ash. In the film, they kind of hint at the fact that maybe it's like some sort of environmental disaster, which whatever it could be, but that's obviously as a result of something else. And I take this to be, there are scenes in the book where the earth is shifting under their feet and they can feel the earthquakes and the sort of growing pains of the earth. They see that they call the sun sort of an alien sun that is blotted out in the ash of the darkened sky. And I take this as sort of obviously an apocalyptic event. Either it's a nuke or a Vesuvian volcano, or it's an engineered depop event, or it is a sort of, in the life of the book, a sort of a tribulation event. And it could be all of those things together. But we're not really led on to the causes because the characters themselves don't know the cause. And in fact, there's a great scene where the dad, and his son are walking down the road. The whole thing takes place on the road. So it's, in a way, it's kind of an anti Huck Finn, because they're not in the flood, and they're not like in the old man in Faulkner. They're not in the diluvian, passageway. They are on this blackened road. And it's truly horrific, but they have to stay off the road, but on the road enough to get down to the coast, but they can't stay on the road because they'll be spotted by these blood cults. And it shows you basically that how quickly civilization has corrupted and degraded and turned in on itself, because there's also another part where they describe the characters in the cities as being basically, as soon as things started to fall apart, they left the cities, and they were like pilgrims on the road out of the cities towards some civilized, wild nature of chaos, if that makes sense. That's kind of a that sounds paradoxical, but it makes sense within the life of the novel. And quickly they turn into murderers and cannibals. They start eating each other. And the people that survive seem to be either the I wanna say completely virtuous, because the child is obviously in this state of wild innocence, but the father, sort of functions as a kind of a Saint Christopher, because his whole existence is, he says, each the other's world entire." In other words, his whole life, and he tells his son this, is dedicated towards keeping his son alive, and he will kill anybody that touches him. But that's because this is extremists. This is in extremis, right? This is like the point of death. Everything they do and everything that they see is on the point of death. And it's interesting mentioning everything that they see, because the man constantly wants to take in the world according to his senses, right? It's all sort of empirical data points everywhere. But what we learn is that they are in a world where their senses, they rely on their senses, but their senses are gone. In other words, their senses lie to them, and they're in this sort of blind new world. They call it a new world in the text. Also, the motif of blindness is constant throughout, and it's interesting what McCarthy does here, because it's not blindness in the sense of like, an Odyssey, right? Or even T.S. Eliot's Wasteland, where we have like a Tiresias character. It's like they are the living seeing blind. They can all see, but they are blind to the world around them, purposefully so. The boy is the only one that seems to have any sense of vision. I'm redlining here. Hopefully, if I drop out for a second, just give it a second, because the everybody's on the internet down here, and I'm not on my same internet. So if I start to go out, and I drop frames. Hopefully, it'll come back. You guys, just you got to be patient with me. All right. So, the way I think about the text of this book is basically okay. There we go. So we should be coming back. Yeah, and they'll take care of it in the restream in the review. But it's just give me a second here. All right. So, um, the way I like to think about this, the form of this book is it's basically it's a prose poem. And I don't know if McCarthy took a specific cue from Rimbaud, from Arthur Rimbaud, but it certainly has bits of his book Illuminations and then also his prose poem, The Drunken Boat. And I find that both in interestingly, I found that both in The Old Man, in Faulkner, and in this. And what I mean is, the idea of the prose poem seems to be also self-contradictory because obviously, the poem is written in lines of verse. But if we take Coleridge's definition of poetry, right, the best words in the best order, then the contradiction seems to match, especially just on the surface, because these people are alive but they shouldn't be. There's no reason that anybody in the book really should be alive in the world in which they found themselves, but they are alive. So it makes sense that they are kind of wandering around with eyes, but they don't have eyes to see, and that they're blind. And that the child is the only one who seems to have any sort of pure vision. Um, Also that the form of the book is written in a kind of a prose poem. It's written in paragraphs without indentation. So, for instance, just look at these 2 unmarked pages, like, if you can see that, you see how it's broken up without indentation, and what that means is basically that we have fragments of narrative and fragments of the life of the characters on the landscape of the page, okay? So it's a lot like verse where the verse line will be an entire life, right? And when the line breaks and goes to the next line, then we have another life. We have the life of the poem. But in this, we have that according to paragraphs. They should be stanzas, but they are not because everything is sort of what it is and what it shouldn't be in terms of the text. Um, I found this also to be a kind of a chronicle. What is it that we read recently that was not a history, but a chronicle? One of the last streams that we did. Also, we have kind of the 2 characters almost taking a reverse track. It's like they're going, down I wrote a Miltonian, Dantean, Yeatsian hellscape. It's Vesuvian, Pompeian, ash frozen, and a new aeon. I mean, this seems to be the post Depop event that we read about so much. Like, this is it. This is dramatized in the book. There are no people. All the people are left as anyone that's alive is either these 2 guys and then the characters we meet at the end, or we meet the old kind of doddering man who, when I read the book, it's like he's supposed to be the wise man on the road, but I found him to be just a kind of a doddering fool, and not a fool in a King Lear way, where he's the wise fool, right? A sophomore. He's actually a fool lost in the fragmentation of postmodernism in this completely broken, ash-ridden landscape of dystopia. Um, or the characters are the totally sick, twisted, evil, Satanist blood cults. And I'm not reading too much into the novel to use that kind of language. I mean, that is the language of the book. That's what is used. I'll get to some of the specific quotes from the book. I mean, one thing about McCarthy is that I've said this about not about every writer that we've read, even though we've been reading a lot of books from the canon. But I will say that let me switch my chair up a little here. I will say that McCarthy reminds me a lot of Bret Easton Ellis in this way. There's not really much of a correlation, except for postmodernism, and that both of these guys can write the shit out of a sentence. I mean, these guys can start a book and they can end a book, if anything. And that sounds, you may hear that and say, like, okay, well, so what? Well, you know, it's incredibly difficult to begin a book or to end a book. We all know that just from not even from creative writing, but we know that from our own analytical writing when we were in school. Think about when you had to write essays, how difficult it was to start and end an essay. And of course, this is not analytical writing, this is creative writing. But McCarthy, one thing that he does with this book is it doesn't feel like it has a true beginning or end because what has passed is kind of gone into the ash cloud of history. And the old man, not the old man from Faulkner, but the protagonist in this, will actually address that very point. He will say, "There is no past, there is no future. There's not really even a now. It's just him trying to exist. Um, you know, putting his head down and just doing one thing to the next and trying to survive. They constantly repeat this. It's almost like a Greek chorus, the refrain throughout the book, which is, "Are we going to die? No. Yes, we're going to die sometime. Are we ever going to die? Well, ever's a long time. Okay. Well, are we going to die soon? Not soon, but maybe." And so we get the feeling from the dad that like every day they don't know whether they're gonna die or not. So one symbol of that in the book is the fact that the man has a revolver. He carries a gun. They've got very few possessions. One of the things that they need the most, they need shoes. Everybody, all the corpses that they come across, all the carcasses and the corpses, especially the tessellated, flagellated skulls in the pharmacy and the bits of hair and the tooth rot out of the skulls that they see on the carcasses beside the road, and the frozen, uh, almost sculpture-like carcasses of the people trying to crawl and climb their way out of an ash cloud of burnt oil on the road. It's like they're half human, and they were eviscerated in the middle of whatever this event was. None of them nobody has shoes. And so it really, it puts it really makes you keep in mind the fact that, like, all of the little things are important. Like, when there's a scene where they find a bunker, and the dad is brilliant. I mean, he's walking along in the grass outside of this house, and he goes back in, he finds a garden hoe. He can't find tools. He goes back out in the yard, and he drops the hoe into the ground. He kind of starts digging into the earth because he feels something hollow in the earth. So he is he's totally tapped into nature, right? And all their surroundings. He At night, all he does is listen to the utter empty blackness, and it's deafening to him because any sound has to make him aware that marauders could come and roip and kill and eat his son. So he finds this, he starts digging into the ground, and then he finds a padlocked, door in the ground, which is interesting because it reminds me of Seamus Heaney's Door in the Dark. And the son says, "Are there we can't go in there, there's gonna be bad people in there," because of what they had just seen, which I'll get back to. And he says, "No, this one's locked on the outside, and it's in the dirt, and it was buried. This is gonna have something." So they find a bunker. They actually break the lock, they go down, and they find the sweetness of, they find that somebody had built a bunker and had put canned food and like blankets, and there's a chemical toilet, there's bunk beds, there's fresh water, there's peaches. They eat peaches from these cans, and like they gorge themselves on the sweetness of just being alive. But it's interesting to keep in mind, because one thing that's interesting about the book is that the son did not live in the world prior to the tribulation. I'm just going to call it that because that's what it seems to be in the book. Um, Instead, he was born into it, and in fact, we get the description of how he was born. And the reason that the gun only has two bullets is because we're supposed to sort of. It's kind of confusing because we think that, okay, he had a revolver with three bullets. One of them, he sort of he kind of fades into the scene where we're describing, obviously, the man's wife, and he lived in the world before this happened. he saw an arc light in the sky and then a bunch of resounding thunderous noises, and then that's supposed to be we're supposed to read into that what we will. The wife basically says, that she, you're not going to make it, and death is a suitor, death is a friend, and that echoes later what the old man says on the road, because the old man says, death is our best friend. Everyone, he says, the world would be better. This is why I hate the old man in the book, the old man that they meet on the road. The old man says, the world would be better if there were no people, because then death would have no more hunger. Okay, that makes sense in terms of what he's saying, this crazy guy. But it's also like, dude, you're the one living. You're the one trying to live. You got to keep on livin, right? And he is supposed to be um a kind of a counterpoint to the man or the protagonist or the dad, because the dad doesn't trust this man, doesn't want to feed him, but the boy obviously is so innocent and has this spark of life that he says, "No, we gotta give him food. He's gotta live. It doesn't matter." So the boy gives him selflessly, right? He gives him food selflessly. And then they go on down the road, and the little boy thinks nothing of it. Everybody in the book is also startled by the sight of the boy, mostly because there are no children in the world, but also to see this pure kid who's existed like with his dad. And in fact, after the dad is dead at the end and he comes upon the cool Mad Max style dystopian marauder at the end, who's also a good guy. The guy says, that was your dad, wasn't it? What happened to the old man?" And the little boy says, "Oh, he's frozen, he's cold, he's not moving anymore, he's back there. I covered him in blankets." And the new guy, the new Mad Max guy says, "Yeah, he's dead. Frankly, you got two choices. You can either go with me, go with my family, or you can stay here. And I don't know if you stay here alone. I don't know how much longer you're gonna last, and I don't even know how you lasted this long in the first place. You should be dead." But we trust the guy at the end because the kid says, "Do you want me to give? I'm not going to give you my gun." And he says, "I don't want your gun. You can keep your gun." Okay. Um, he's also got handmade shells. He made shotgun shells with candle wax and gunpowder, and he's got a shotgun, and he obviously knows how to handle himself. He's got a family, he's got a wife and two kids, and the kid had actually seen the little kid before that earlier in a town, and we don't know whether it was a mirage, whether he because again we get this motif of like the image of the house. They constantly come upon broken houses where the windows are shattered and the house is empty and covered in ash, and that's supposed to be a symbol of the world itself, the outer frame of the world, but also the inner state of the protagonist, the man. Meanwhile, the little kid, like, he's always beside fires, right? He's always building fires, or he's glowing and he's keeping warm. So we know that the man is kindling the love of his son, who is like the last bastion of purity in the world. And in fact, it's the boy who brings up God in the book. At one point when they're in the bunker, he says, "Are we the bad guys?" And the dad says, "No, son, we're not the bad guys." And he says, "Yeah, but we're taking all this stuff down here." And he's, "What happened to the guys who had it? Did we kill him?" And the dad says, "No, son, we didn't kill them, but they're gone. They've been gone for a long time." And the son says, "Well, should we thank them?" And the dad says, "I don't know how to thank them." And he says, "All right, well," and he does this weird prayer. And it's interesting because the son obviously has grown up in this world, and without any religion, right? But he says he sort of prays to the spirit of the people who are gone. But at the end of it, he says, "And I hope that you are okay and safe with God in heaven," which is pretty amazing. Um, Also, there's another scene at the end where, or when they're on the road and they come across the old man. No, I'm focusing on that one particular scene a lot, but it is pretty vital to the narrative. And he comes when they come across the old man, and the dad says, "I don't know why he wants to give you anything. I don't know why he's going to give you food." And the old man says, "Yeah, I wouldn't have given you any." And he says, the dad says, "Maybe it's because he believes in God." So, in other words, the kid gives selflessly. He exists in a world where there seems to be nothing. I mean, like literally nothing. The whole time is spent scavenging for food, trying to stay alive, trying to stay quiet, trying to stay off the road. They can't come across these cannibal blood cult marauders because they're going to kill them. They only come across like, 3 or 4 people in the whole book, but each time it's terrible. Um, they come up. There's the one scene everybody knows if you know this book at all, or if you've seen the film, and that is where they come to a house. The house seems to be occupied but empty, or at least somebody lived there recently. They sneak up to the dad and the son. They sneak up to the house. They go inside. They kind of, creep around. And then, of course, they find a locked door with a big, bolted padlock in the middle of the kitchen. This is not good, right? Because the other place that they come to later is a door into the dark in the outside in nature going down into the ground. So nobody locked it from the inside. This is a place where the dad says there's got to be something good in there. They're hiding their goods because they bolted it from in here. And the son says, "No, dad, don't go down there. Don't go down there." And he says, "No, we got to." And you listen to the dad because they don't have anything to eat and they got to get something. But they unbolt the door, they go down, and of course, when they get downstairs, they go into the cellar, and he says there is a god awful smell, even for this world where everything stinks and reeks of putrefaction and death. They go down and they see a group of naked, starving slave people chained against a wall in a dark cellar, one of whom has been his leg has been cut off to the thigh, another one is basically cut off to the waist, and you know right away that this is the food source for these demon people. So they immediately turn around and they run out the house and they get away just in time because they book it across this sort of glade, if you can call it that. It's a dark glade, nothing grows, right? But they get away, they risk running in the open to get away, and then they realize there's like a pillbox unit by the road where the people had been hiding, and they would ambush anybody that walked by, capture them, take them into the cellar, chain them up, and then basically kill them. And they have to hide at night. They cover themselves with leaves, and at night they hear the screams and agonizing pain of the people being slaughtered, right, in this dark ritual of viscera and brains. It's absolutely terrifying. But the book is, with all that, the book is actually hopeful because we're not we trust in the dad. We trust in this Saint Christopher character to carry his son over the raging waters of the blackness of the of night, right? And the reason I call this obsidian is because, going back to the wife, we had three bullets in the revolver. Now we have two, and we kind of think, okay, the mother shot herself, right? And then we have the two bullets, and we learn basically that the revolver is not for keeping out the bad people. It is for uh-oh, my chat died, so it disconnected. So hopefully it'll come back on my computer. All kinds of internet craziness here, y'all. Um, but it is for um basically if they get taken over by the marauding eh, you know cannibal people, then I can hear you, got to turn it down. That's me. I can hear me. Right. Um, one of the bullets is for the son, and the other bullet is for the dad. And then basically, when they're on the road, they get overtaken by the marauders who are driving a diesel truck. It's a bunch of demon people in a diesel truck. All have people have shotguns and rifles up there. They're like, where do these people even get the weapons? Well, it's because they banded together to hunt and kill and eat other people. One of the guys goes into the woods, and then they happen to be standing there, and the dad puts his gun on the guy and says, basically, if you move, I'm gonna kill you. And the guy says, I think that you are I think you're chicken shit. I don't think you're gonna do it. And he says, well, not before I make your head into a canoe, like Kurt Russell says in Tombstone, right? No, he says, if you If you move, the sound of this bullet will not happen until after the bullet has scrambled your brains inside your skull. And the guy says, "I don't think you're gonna," and he grabs the kid, puts a knife to his throat, but then the dad shoots him and kills him, and then he grabs his son, and then they run. Let me know in the chat if I'm still going here, you guys. There we go. All right, I should be good. Get those numbers down. So yeah, so then what happens is we have basically one bullet left, right? And the one bullet is going to be left for it's going to be saved for him to give to his son in case anybody tries to get him. And he says he tries to teach his son, how he's gonna off himself or whatever. And the son says, I don't. Basically, the dad and the son know that they have to be together in the world, and the dad is not gonna ever leave the son into darkness. That's what he says. And the son is constantly saying he's scared. He's like 8 or 10 years old in this book. Um, but he's got one bullet left. Now, eventually, when they get down to the sea, they find a boat. They find the wreckage of a boat. The boat has been wrecked by the sea itself, not by people, which is interesting. And they find a flare gun. So later, what happens is when they're walking back through the town, at the end of the book, the dad gets shot through the leg with a kind of makeshift, crude, and probably poisoned and rusty arrow from a crossbow, and he turns and he shoots the flare gun up into the window, and he hears the screams of the guy catching on fire, and then he goes upstairs and he finds the woman. Well, the man and the woman up there, I assume, are the same people that they saw earlier. Now, this is a horrible scene. What they see is they have crouched down in a wooded area, and they look up, and at one point they see four guys. They see one person at the top of the road in silhouette, and then three more people appear, and they're hiding, and the four people go by on the road. Well, one of them they see is a pregnant woman. Well, can you imagine what happens next? This is terrible. I'll try to put it lightly, but the next day, the son says, basically, we got to go and check out what these people are doing to see if they're nearby. He kind of crests over the top of a hill and looks down, and he sees the four people, and um, he sees that the woman is no longer pregnant, and that they have a spit and a fire and a roast going, and that's what you can imagine, right? So in other words, these are demon people. Get as far away from them as possible. You have no weapons. Get out to the sea. Go away, right? You got to survive. These people are absolute they are the absolute ninth circle trash, right? And so earlier I said that it was kind of a Miltonian, Dantean, Yeatsian hellscape. And that is because um, on page, let's see, on pages 20 and 21, it says, in the long ago, somewhere very near this place, he'd watched a falcon fall down the long blue wall of the mountain and break with the keel of its breastbone the midmost from a flight of cranes and take it to the river below, all gangly and wrecked and trailing its loose and blousy plumage in the still autumn air. That's one prose poem paragraph. Right, and it seems like people often mistake the difference between a run-on sentence and a long sentence. It's not a run-on sentence. A run-on sentence is the sentence that where the predicate gets away from the subject and runs away with itself, and the sentence it ends up having no meaning. Now, McCarthy obviously takes extreme poetic license with his writing because what he does is he writes almost solely in sentence fragments. But of course, there's a purpose for that. The purpose is that the sentence fragments are supposed to mimic the fragmentation of the landscape in the narrative and the fragmentation of the world in terms of their spiritual vision. On page 21, he says, and the dreams so rich in color, how else would death call you? Waking in the cold dawn, it all turned to ash instantly, like certain ancient frescoes entombed for centuries, suddenly exposed to the day. So that's Pompeian right there. That is specifically supposed to be a Vesuvian image of the the volcano has exploded, right? And the people are breathing in the pneumono ultramicroscopic silico volcano coniosis. That's the longest word in English. They're breathing in the micros microscopic fragments of the exploded dust cloud of the volcano, and that is supposed to represent them. That is supposed to represent them. Hi. That's supposed to represent them breathing in the dust cloud of death post nuke, right? Also, it means that their insides are ashen. They're no longer breathing the air of creation. Now they're living in this hellscape world where even their insides are darkened. And um, so what it reminds me of is, have you guys has anybody put in the chat right now if you've ever been to Pompeii? I went to Pompeii on a school trip in 8th grade. One of the best trips I've ever been on. Um and we went it was crazy because you go up there and then you see Vesuvius, in the distance, like across the water. And Pompeii is crazy. It's this pervert town. I mean, they've excavated everything, but it's got all the frescoes are it's obviously a town. It's like a sin city for the Romans. But you see these frescoes of, the second oldest profession and all this stuff, and all the hoe houses and all that. But what you also see is the man, you can see this on Google, the man frozen in time, um, clutching at the air. He's on his back and he's just been magmatized, right? He's covered in ash. He's frozen in this glass case. And it's real sick because it's a human being that they excavated, and he's like on display. But that is what they're talking about in this scene, right? The certain ancient frescoes entombed for centuries suddenly exposed to the day. It's like the world is completely covered in this ash cloud. Everything is dead and dusted. And Maddie says, okay, went to Pompeii and he surfed down Mount Vesuvius on a lava stream. That's true. That's a true story. Let's get after it. All right. So um, the pilgrims occur, and when I thought about this is on page 24 of the book. The pilgrims, the pilgrimage is a constant motif in the book because, and it reminds me of Seamus Heaney's punishment poem, which I'll get to in a second. But what it says is, by dusk of the day following, they were at the city. The long concrete sweeps of the interstate exchanges, like the ruins of a vast funhouse against the distant murk. McCarthy writes such a poetic. I mean, he loves words. Though he just chews the words. The words are so cacophonous and onomatopoetic. All the words like indicate action. He carried the revolver in his belt at the front and wore his parka unzipped. The mummied dead everywhere, the flesh cloven along the bones, the ligaments dried to tug and taut as wires, shriveled and drawn like latter-day bog folk, their faces of boiled sheeting, the yellowed palings of their teeth. They were discalked to a man like pilgrims of some common order, for all their shoes were long since stolen. So, do you see how it's like everybody looks like a penitent, right? Because they have no shoes. Their heads, in a lot of cases, they have no head or their heads are burned off or their scalp is burned off, right? Or their skin has been flayed. So it's like they are some sort of, you can't help but think of the man and the son as a kind of Virgil and Dante. Now, we did Dante's Inferno, and instead of walking down the concentric circles of hell in Dante's Inferno, they are walking along the lines of this black road through the mountains all the way to the sea. And what one thing McCarthy also does brilliantly is when they get to the sea, they're not saved. It's not, the illuminating light and the of dawn and the freshness of the sea. It's like, no, they just get to another place where even the ocean is black and the beach is strewn with the bones of all of the dead fish. And only the eyes of the squid somewhere in the sea turn endlessly like a leviathan, like in Moby Dick. But their hope comes not from the outside, but in terms of their senses. But their only hope is in terms of the child praying to God, and in terms of the child finding another father figure and having a family. That's the only thing that's going to save them. It's really amazing because all of the other bands of people have either eaten their families, killed and raped and eaten their families, or they formed these new sort of anti-families where even when the dad kills the guy in the woods and they run away, later they come back and they find that the marauders have gutted the guy, and it's just a pile of guts and bones. They've already eaten him. They've already eaten their friend. So there's only the family that can allow them to stick together and to survive. Um, the bog folk reference reminds me of Seamus Heaney's Punishment, which we read that in one of the earlier streams. Maybe it was with TGF in the Northern Ireland stream. I don't remember, but um, Punishment, the poem by Seamus Heaney, which Seamus Heaney won the Nobel Prize in 1995. This book won the Pulitzer Prize for fiction in 2006. I got to meet Seamus Heaney. Because where I went to school, Queen's University, the writing center is named after him, and so I'm anyway, I met him or whatever. But and he read this poem, and it's from his poem, his book North, and the poem is about how um, they uncovered in Scandinavia. They found a bog, and they excavated the bog, and they found a woman buried in the bog with a noose around her neck, and she had been completely mummified and frozen in time because of the bog. And when they pulled her out, Heaney has this poem about how he can imagine how she has been condemned to death for adultery or possibly. All right, should be reconnecting. Am I back? Okay, am I back? All right, there we go. All right, I'm back. All right, sorry about that, y'all. It'll fix it in the restream too. I just got disconnected there for a second. All right. Yeah, we're back. We're back, baby. Shouts out to my homeboy out there at Tech Noir Graphics, Mikhail. Love you. Shouts out to my sister. I'm in her beautiful home down here on the Gulf Coast. Shouts out to Rachel Wilson, based homeschool mama. Yes, I cannot wait. I cannot wait to be on one of those streams for you. Our homegirl out there, based homeschool mama, is setting up her own channel on YouTube finally. She's already a superstar. We saw her first on Exposing Powerful Lies live streams that, propelled her out into the stratosphere. So we're going to see her with her own channel. And I'm proud to say, you know what? I'm not bragging, folks. I don't usually brag, but look, I'm not bragging, but Rachel Wilson, based homeschool mama, actually asked Jerry and I to be one of the first guests on her show. So I'm looking forward to that anytime. That's going to be super fun. I can't wait. We might even do Team America. Team America, fuck yeah. But whatever we do, I can't wait to go on there because we love Base Homeschool Mama. Shouts out to everybody out there. I love y'all. Thanks for sticking with me here. And what was I talking about? I was talking about poetry and Seamus Heaney. I don't know where I got cut off, but what I was saying was basically that the poem Seamus Heaney, Punishment by Seamus Heaney, is about when they bog was excavated with the mummified remains of a what he sees in the poem as an accused adulteress or falsely accused adulteress, and that she has a noose tied around her neck, and that he would, if he had been there, cast the first stones of silence. He says, not doing anything with his cowardice. Well, that sets the scene. I see a direct correlation. I'm not saying that Cormac McCarthy read that poem. Maybe, I mean, who knows? But the way that literature works, I see a correlation between that and this poem, especially in terms of penitence, the punishment aspect, the bog folk that he just mentioned on page 24. And the idea that the pilgrimage is mentioned continuously in the book. Another reference is on page um, 33. He says, 32 and 33. People sitting on the sidewalk in the dawn, half immolate and smoking in their clothes. This is his vision later on. Like failed sectarian suicides. Interesting you mentioned sectarianism there when I was just talking about Seamus Heaney and Northern Ireland. Others would come to help them. Within a year, there were fires on the ridges and deranged chanting, the screams of the murdered. By day, the dead impaled on spikes along the road. What had they done? He thought that in the history of the world, it might even be that there was more punishment than crime, but he took small comfort from it. Does that make sense? In other words, this is I love in this book that we get the that we get the um, impressionistic view of what's happened in the past. We don't get an objective view telling us exactly what's happened in terms of this apocalypse. We only get the impression of one guy going through the world. Another one occurs. Let's see, the gray snow with a fine mist of blood. He says on page 28, in those first years, the roads were peopled with refugees shrouded up in their clothing, wearing masks and goggles, sitting in their rags by the side of the road like ruined aviators. That's interesting. That sort of does that bring to mind the kind of great reset world in which we find ourselves now? Their barrows heaped with shoddy, towing wagons or carts, their eyes bright in their skulls, breedless shells of men tottering down the causeways, again, the Giant's Causeway, causeways, like migrants in a fever land. The frailty of everything revealed at last, old and troubling issues resolved into nothingness and night. The last instance of a thing takes the class with it, turns out the light and is gone. Look around you. Ever is a long time, but the boy knew what he knew, that ever is no time at all. Okay, so the way that time disappears, sort of dissipates and disappears in this landscape where they can't ever tell the seasons, they don't ever know what month it is, they don't know what day it is. They only know according to the coldness of the cold or the heat of the seasons. Um, he says, let's see, where's another reference? Oh, all the trees in the world are going to fall sooner or later, he says on page 35. So that is where they probably took the idea of the environmental disaster for the film. But that just seems to be, that just indicates that the world is ending in general, right? That all life is being extinguished, that there's no more air to breathe. Everything is blackness and lack of oxygen, right? Um, Also, that reminds me of the Jack Kerouac. Remember the Jack Kerouac stream we did, right? All your San Franciscos will rise again and fall one day. Um, on page, let's see, on page 52 and 53, again, we get this end of the world imagery and what has happened in the past and now that they're surviving. The clocks, this is also the timelessness. There's no time. Shouts out to TGF, our homeboy out there, the green feathers. Love you out there, TGF. That's our homeboy. He says the clock stopped at 117, a long sheer of light, and then a series of low concussions. We just covered this. He got up and went to the window. What is it? She said. He didn't answer. He went into the bathroom and threw the light switch, but the power was already gone. A dull rose glow in the window glass. He dropped to one knee and raised the lever to stop the tub and then turned on both taps as far as they would go. She was standing in the doorway in her nightwear, clutching the jam, cradling her belly with one hand. What is it? She said. What is happening? I don't know. What are you taking a bath? Why are you taking a bath? I'm not. See, that shows this is so perfect. That shows us that right away the dad was dialed in and clued in. He knew that as soon as the clock stopped, and as soon as he saw the long sheer of light and he heard the low concussions and he turned the power, there was no more power. Bam, go in the bathroom, fill up the tub with as much water as you can get before it gets cut off. And she's like, why are you taking a bath? I'm not, but he doesn't have to explain it. And then the child is born into this desolation. Um, he cuts the cord with a pair of gardening shears. He tried to keep a rein on this, but his heart was not in it. No list. This is from page 54. And it's also interesting that this came out. There's a number of different films that this came. I mean, the post-apocalyptic um, theme, right, is one that is constant in terms of especially cinema, right? Even, Mad Max and the Feral Child, right, sort of takes its that's what this is. This sort of mirrors that in a way. Of course, all of this obviously has biblical images and allusions from which to draw, right? We have two people set out against the world in the wilderness, right? And we have like the righteousness of the child um, set against the absolute demonic, outcrop of all of the survivors. And one thing that we have here is after this book was published and then they made the film, we had the Book of Eli, which I thought was interesting because we find out that the old man later is named Eli. And then he says that that's a lie. His name is not Eli, which is like I lie, Eli, um, or El, right? El, name of God, a name of God, and then he flips it into I lie. Yes, but then obviously the book, the movie, the Book of Eli came out. There's also another one that came out recently with Casey Affleck. That was again it was a father and daughter in that instance, which is just a ripoff of The Road. Not a ripoff, but it's derivative of that, right? Um, you hear the cat back there scratching. I see you, kitty. That's Charlotte. Um, so he says, no list of things to be done. The day providential to itself. The hour. There is no later. This is later. All things of grace and beauty, such that one holds them to one's heart, have a common provenance in pain, their birth in grief and ashes. So he whispered to the sleeping boy, I have you. So now you may read that and think that this book is completely lost in the obliteration of darkness and despair. But do you see that in the language, in the midst of the pain of the cacophonous language, we have hope, we have brightness, we have he whispered to his sleeping son that I have you. Each is the other world, other's world entire, right? Um, the Walking Dead is what I was going to mention. Sort of comes out of this, and he even says here on page 55, what in God's name are you talking about? We're not survivors. We're the walking dead in a horror film. But do you realize the irony is that they are the survivors? They are the survivors, but they also seem to be the last vestiges of the metaphysical survivors of this hellscape. On let's see, 56 and 57, we have when there were 3 bullets in the gun instead of 2, I was stupid. Um, she says, I'd take him with me if it weren't for you. In other words, she's gonna kill their son if it weren't for the husband. Sooner or later, they will catch us and they will kill us, she says. They will roip me. They will roip him. They're going to roip us and kill us and eat us, and you won't face it. You'd rather wait for it to happen, but I can't. I can't. So she kills herself. Um, she says, death is not, he says, death is not a lover. She says, oh, yes, he is. Okay, so on page 58 and 59, she was gone, and the coldness of it was her final gift. He would do it with a flake of obsidian. He taught her himself, sharper than steel, the edge and atom thick, and she was right. There was no argument. The 100 nights they'd sat up debating the pros and cons of self destruction with the earnestness of philosophers chained to a madhouse wall. In the morning, the boy said nothing at all, and when they were packed and ready to set up, out upon the road, he turned and looked back at their campsite and said, she's gone, isn't she? And he said, yes, she is. Always so deliberate, hardly surprised by the most outlandish advents. Right. He uses the Christian language of Advent there. A creation perfectly evolved to meet its own end. He's talking about the boy. They sat at the window and ate in their robes by candlelight and a midnight supper and watched distant cities burn. Do you see how they're almost mendicants? A few nights later, she gave birth in their bed by the light of a dry cell lamp, gloves meant for dishwashing, the improbable appearance of the small crown of the head, the pun on the crown, right? The crown of the head, the child is also crowning, right? Because she's giving birth. This is going back, slightly going back again, fragmented landscape, fragmented time, but also the crown, like the child has been anointed, like he's being anointed, like he's something, like there's obvious Christ-like imagery in this, right? And they're not saying that the boy is they're not saying that the boy is a Messiah, right? There's one Messiah. They're saying that the boy seems to be this sort of light in the new world, in the new eon, because of what he has, because of his purity and his righteousness and his youth and his innocence. Um, Streaked with blood and lank black hair, the rank meconium. Her cries meant nothing to him. Beyond the window, just the gathering cold, the fires on the horizon. He held aloft the scrawny red body so raw and naked and cut the cord with kitchen shears, and wrapped his son in a towel, wrapped him in swaddling clothes, right? Next page, God, he whispered. The man's purpose, he makes his purpose plain on page 77. He says this is basically the man's thesis, or the thesis of the whole novel. He says, "You wanted to know what the bad guys look like? Now you know. It may happen again. My job is to take care of you. My job," it also seems to be a pun there, like Job is Job, right? Like he's going through these series of trials. My job is to take care of you. I was appointed to do that by God. I will kill anyone who touches you. Do you understand? He's going to keep his son alive. And right before that, on the page before that, they talked about, oh, it says, "This is my child," he said. "I wash a dead man's brains out of his hair. That is my job." Then he wrapped him in the blankets and carried him to the fire. So again, the carrying to the fire is a motif throughout this, where at the end, of course, we have the boy says, when he meets his new father figure, he says, "Do you also carry the fire?" And before his dad died, he said, "You have to carry the fire." It's the fire. It's the fire. It's God's fire. It's the fire of human existence, right? It's the fire of life. They have to keep living. They got to keep living, man. And they're going to live by not living on death. They're not going to be the walking dead, the living dead, living on the consumed bodies of the other people, like the woman who killed and ate her own child that she just delivered. These people are sick. These people are sick. But he and his son are going to live, and they're going to live like men, right? They're going to live how men should live. He says, "All this like some ancient anointing. So be it. Evoke the forms. When you've nothing else, construct ceremonies out of the air and breathe upon them." Obviously, the breathing upon them is supposed to be the inspiration, right? The breath of God, the breath of life, but the breath of God. Seriously, though, the inspiration, the breath of God, the breath of life, right? God breathes life into the world. God breathes life into Adam and makes him man. The ancient anointing, like this child is being anointed, evoke the forms. It's almost like we're past the world of the living and in some sort of platonic world of forms here. On page 75, this was the first human being other than the boy he'd spoken to in more than a year. My brother at last, the reptilian calculations in those cold and shifting eyes, the gray and rotting teeth, plaggy with human flesh. The only other guy that he sees is the guy he has to kill. Um, Also on page 78, I saw again a reference to sort of a self-reference to the passenger, Cormac McCarthy's The Passenger and Blood Meridian. The changeling child announcing the arrival of a traveling spectacle in shire and village, who does not know that behind him the players have all been carried off by wolves. In other words, McCarthy has this continuing image throughout his books where we have kind of a dancing marionette series of players, right? Which evokes obviously Shakespeare, right? With Life's But a Walking Shadow, a poor player that struts and frets his hour upon the stage that is heard no more. It's a tale told by an idiot, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. And then, of course, that ties in with Faulkner, the sound and the fury. But he constantly gives us. Remember, in The Passenger and in the sequel that just came out, Stella Maris, we have the thalidomide kid, right? Which is this fragmented version of his Bobby Western's sister, who is this brilliant nuclear physicist, but is a schizo with DID, and sees this marionette band of sort of harlequin players who are supposed to be the symbol of her psyche and how it's fragmented. And we see that throughout his books. Remember, we saw that in Blood Meridian. I mean, that's what Judge Holden's men, the scalpers, are supposed to be. This kind of archetypal group of uh, a comedy troupe of players who sort of dance and dance macabre their way through life. Also, we have at the end of the book, Judge Holden in the postscript is carrying the fire, digging the holes throughout the hellish landscape, just like in this book, right? It ends with carrying the fire. Um, on page 230, we have sort of an allusion to Caesar, right? There were a few nights lying in the dark that he did not envy the dead, which is what um who says that in Caesar? Is it Brutus says that to Cassius? I don't envy the dead. No, I envy the dead because they have no more fear. They have no more fear of fearing death because they are already dead. And that is what sort of a lot of these characters in the book seem to they it's like they exist in this living death, thinking of nothing other than the put in front of them, which is what the good guys do. Also, they're called the good guys in the book. Um, like on page 238, every day is a lie, he said, but you were dying. That is not a lie. Okay, so it's just this like sort of meaningless, you know, obsidian cut existence of trying to cut your way through the dark with the sharpest edge and angle of your own personality and your own will? Or is there something else? Does the obsidian reflect upon you, right? Does it reflect you holding it? And are you supposed to be darker than the ash cloud of the world within this book in order to finally get to the light of the sea and the sun, even though the sun is this kind of this alien flint rock, right, in space? Or is it just the child has the inner light, right? Of he prays, right? He searches for God, he honors his father. Um, that's sort of represented by the flares. Also, let's see, page CF page 230 on 241. If the box of flares that they find that they shoot into the sky, there were a few nights lying in the dark that he did not envy the dead. Yeah. He says, "Can you shoot somebody? Would it kill him? Yeah, it might set him on fire." So in other words, they're carrying the fire because they're carrying the flares, but they're also carrying the fire of living, right? Um, yes, on page 246, they couldn't see it very far. Could they, Papa? Who? Anybody? No, not far. If you wanted to show where you were, you mean like to the good guys? Yes, or anybody that you wanted them to know where you were. Like who? I don't know. Like God? Yeah, maybe somebody like that. You get what he's saying here? He's saying that the flare for the kid is to show God where they are, like a light in the dark, like they're looking for light, but they have light. They have it. So really, it's that they are illuminating the sky because he is looking for God. He knows God has already found him. I will do what I promised, he whispered. I will not send you into the darkness alone, he says on page 239. Um, the last day on earth, the edge of light. He walked out on the beach to the edge of the light and stood with his clenched fists on top of his skull and fell to his knees, sobbing in rage. This is the one moment where the dad lets go of his emotions. And he does that because he goes out and silently screams into the ocean and into the blackness of the void in front of him because his son is sick and he's angry, but he's got the fire of living. And then of course his dad says, oh Christ," and his son lives. Um, let's see. The son is not happy when they chase down the thief that stole all of their stuff. He cannot understand why his dad treats this guy this way. But what he does is he tracks him down, takes his stuff back, and then um, leaves the man naked on the road. And the son is not happy with this. He thinks this is cruel. The dad lives a tooth and nail existence and is trying to show his son that you have to be hard um, in order to survive. But the son is sort of wants to find a medium between the two, right? And also, he is still on his rite of passage. It says on page 273. The days sloughed past uncounted and uncalendared. Along the interstate in the distance, long lines of charred and rusting cars. The raw rims of the wheels sitting in a stiff gray sludge of melted rubber and blackened rings of wire. The incinerate corpses shrunk to the size of a child and propped on the bare springs of the seats. That was an obvious metaphor, purposefully, right? Because of what we had already read. 10,000 dreams ensepulchred within their crozzled hearts. They went on, treading the dead world under like rats on a wheel, the wheel of time, right? Beneath. I just read Herman Hesse's Beneath the Wheel. Synchro. The night's dead still and deader black, so cold. They talked hardly at all. He coughed all the time, and the boy watched him spitting blood, slumping along, filthy, ragged, hopeless. He'd stop and lean on the cart, and the boy would go on and then stop and look back, and he would raise his weeping eyes and see him standing there in the road, looking back at him from some unimaginable future, glowing in that waste like a tabernacle. Right? Like a tabernacle. There was light all about him. 277. There's no prophet in the earth's long chronicle who's not honored here today. Whatever form you spoke of, you were right. Because he says that because when he meets the dystopian renegade, because at the beginning it talks about how the world uh, turned into blood cults who consumed one another almost immediately upon the fallout of civilization. Um, and that is on page, let me find this with the runes. Let's see. That is with the runes. Yeah, oh, where's this with the runes? He says, hold on, I gotta find this one part. The runic, it's say the lost tableau. Okay, yeah, here he goes. Okay, this is a great passage. It's page 90 and 91. Says he's seen it all before, shapes of dried blood in the stubble grass and the gray coils of viscera where the slain had been field dressed and hauled away. The wall beyond held a frieze of human heads, all faced alike, dried and caved in with their taut grins and shrunken eyes. They wore gold rings in their leather ears, and the wind, their sparse and ratty hair, twisted about on their skulls. The teeth in their sockets like dental molds, the crude tattoos etched in some homebrewed woad, faded in the beggared sunlight. Spiders, swords, targets, a dragon, runic slogans, creeds misspelled, old scars with old motifs stitched along their borders. The heads, not truncheon shapeless, had been flayed out of their skins, and the raw skulls painted and signed across the forehead in a scrawl. And one white bone skull had the plate sutures etched carefully in ink like a blueprint for assembly. He looked back at the boy. He looked at the dry grass where it moved and the dark and twisted trees in the rows. He'd come to see a message at each such late history, a message and a warning. And so this tableau of the slain and the devoured did prove to be. So that's what the book basically is, right? A tableau of the slain and the devoured, right? Where civilization crumbles down in on itself so quickly. And the runic slogans and the creeds misspelled of the blood cults, where you have this sort of, you have this, this fall back into a world of shamanistic deviancy and the hell world of the total Satan cults consuming one another and worshiping death. And that is what happens in the book. The way that the book begins is amazing. It says, and I'm gonna get to your super chats in a second there. It says, listen to the beginning of this book. First of all, it begins when. So we begin not at the beginning, we begin in media res, but it's also in the past, but it's kind of like there's no time. Again, there's no time. It's like the past and the present and the future all sort of meld into this one voidless blackness of a decayed, festering, and burned world. When he woke in the woods in the dark and the cold of the night, he reached out to touch the child sleeping beside him. Nights dark beyond darkness, and the days more gray, each one than what had gone before, like the onset of some cold glaucoma dimming away the world. That's so fucking brilliant, man. That is amazing. That is an amazing beginning to this book. First of all, the sounds are like a spellbound witchery, right? It's also like we're sort of babbling infants born into the world like the sun is within the narrative, but like language has disappeared. It's everything is degraded, and all we have is just sounds and just babbling into the dark. Nights dark beyond darkness is obviously supposed to evoke a Miltonian hellscape, right? So dark the darkness was visible, a cold glaucoma dimming away the world. So it's not just that the world itself is dimming away, but it's that our very eyes can't see anymore. We are blind to the world. His hand rose and fell softly with each precious breath. Remember, we were just talking about the breath, right? The inspiration. He pushed away the plastic tarpaulin and raised himself in the stinking robes and blankets and looked towards the east for any light, but there was none. The stinking robes are supposed to be the robes of these two, like they're penitents, like they are pilgrims on this road to salvation. In the dream from which he'd wakened, he had wandered in a cave where the child led him by the hand. So we have dreams, and we have the Platonic cave, the light playing over the wet flowstone walls like pilgrims in a fable, he says, swallowed up and lost among the inward parts of some granitic beast, deep stone flues where the water dripped and sang, holding in the silence the minutes of the earth and the hours and the days of it and the years without cease. All the prepositions are supposed to indicate the rolling nature of time moving onward, even though there's no time. Until they stood in a great stone room where lay a black and ancient lake. And on the far shore, a creature that raised its dripping mouth from the rimstone pool and stared into the light with eyes dead white and sightless as the eggs of spiders. It swung its head low over the water as if to take the scent of what it could not see. Crouching there, pale and naked and translucent, its alabaster bones cast up in shadow and the rocks behind it, its bowels, its beating heart, the brain that pulsed in a dull glass bell. It swung its head from side to side and then gave out a low moan and turned and lurched away and loped soundlessly into the dark. So the great beast has been born, right? This is Yeats. This is the second coming. This is Yeats, right? Somewhere a gaze blank and pitiless as the sun, right? Slouches toward a beast slouches towards Bethlehem to be born, right? This is the new eon. This is what the book is. This is like the this is the tribulation post-apocalyptic dystopia new aeon of an ash world where these are the only survivors and these are the last people, right? And they got to make their way through this Dantean hellscape in a sort of a reverse fashion out the top back into the world. The Black Lake is obviously supposed to be the hellscape of the beast. Also, the constant beast sounds, the hard cacophonous bee sounds. Um, we have Also, we have the functionality of the verb. I said lurched away and loped soundlessly into the dark. The verb this we have constant sentence fragments, so there's fragmentation in the world, but nouns function as verbs. I mean, in a way, McCarthy really does like what we covered in the Anglo-Saxon poems, right? When we discussed the Anglo-Saxon poems and Old English and Seamus Heaney's translation of Beowulf, because the way that I like talking with my hands. I'm sorry I'm moving my hands so much. Look, it's gonna be wonderful. It's gonna be really something special. That's a really bad impression. I'm sorry. But when I think of hand talking, that's what I think of, right? I'm talking with my Look, I'm talking with my hands. Look, Ma, I'll be there in a second, all right? Look, why can't I be like my brother Joey? Why can't I be like my brother Joey? My ma's always saying, huh? What? And my other brother Tony, he's always out there. You know, he's got a job. What? I don't have a job. I'm no good to you, ma. Look, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. Look, forgive me, ma. I'm sorry. All right. That's what I think of as hand talking. Somebody watching this is going to go, I'm so annoyed. I'm so annoyed at this spastic digressions. Whatever. All right. He only knew that the child was his warrant. He said, this is metaphysical darkness. I wrote the nihilism of his trajectory in his worldview. It's interesting. Another motif in this is the books. They come across there are scenes where they come across books, and it's interesting, a sort of a meta reflection on the meaning of books and words within the story, because the books are all both swollen and sodden, and like what does Jim Morrison say? Leaves sodden and silk, chlorine dream, mad stifled witness. They're sodden, but they're also and soaked, but they're also ashen and burned. So there doesn't seem to be any consistency, right? Which is in the nature of the chaos of the world in this book. Slow and opaque, cold and silence. So the way the book ends, by the way, is he again the man dies, the dad dies. We covered this, I know, in the narrative. But what's interesting is the terseness of the language, the terse nature of the language, the brevity. The boy comes across the new man, and it says, um, they have these short conversations that mirror and mimic the way of survival in this landscape, and the way that he survived talking to his dad. Everything was in short monosyllabic sentences. But then at the end, he goes and he kneels beside his father and he prays. He says he'll talk to you every day, and he whispers. And then it says, this is the last 2 pages. The woman, when she saw him, so this is the wife or the woman traveling with the dystopian renegade marauder, who they're now adopting the boy. The woman, when she saw him, put her arms around him and held him. Oh, she said, I'm so glad to see you. She would talk to him sometimes about God. He tried to talk to God, but the best thing was to talk about to his father, and he did talk to him, and he didn't forget. The woman said that was all right. She said that the breath of God was his breath. Yet, though it passed from man to man through all time, he's saved. Once there were brook trout in the streams in the mountains. You could see them standing in the amber current where the white edges of their fins wimpled softly in the flow. They smelled of moss in your hand, polished and muscular and torsional. On their backs were vermiculate patterns. There were maps of the world and its becoming, maps and mazes of a thing which could not be put back, not be made right again. In the deep glens where they lived, all things were older than man, and they hummed of mystery. That's it. That's the book. That is Cormac McCarthy's The Road. Also, as part of that, remember that we discussed, I didn't give you a full breakdown, but I gave you a pretty good breakdown of William Faulkner's The Wild Palms, which includes the 2 stories, The Old Man and The Wild Palms. It's actually called If I Forget Thee, Jerusalem. And again, we'll be going back, and I'll be tomorrow. I guess tomorrow I will be covering The Face of the Crowd, thanks to our homeboy out there, Presley, who has asked me to, who gave me a fat super chat to cover that. That was a big fat super chat sponsored stream. If you want to sponsor a stream, and I sure would appreciate it because it helps me out a lot. But just know that, yeah, I mean, like all our homeboys, DPH, David Patrick Harry, Church of the Eternal Logos, and our homeboy Jerry at Exposing Powerful Lies. If you drop us a fat super chat to cover something, you know that we put our time and effort into it. I mean, look, I love doing this anyway. And, I love covering this, and I'm going to be reading anyway. But if there's something in particular you want me to cover, give me a list of things, and I will, I'm going to spend my time doing it. I'm going to put a lot of time and energy and effort into it. And I'm going to give you my as based of an analysis as I can on that work. If you want me to do a film, drop me $50. And look, I really, that's time, and everybody's time. All of our time is precious. Right? Our time out there, everybody watching this, your time is precious. And that's why I appreciate you even watching me. Because it means a lot to me. And I think that you guys have done a lot to help out the stream. So if you want to continue to help the stream, you want to help me to continue to build the channel, tell your friends about this. Just tell them to hit the subscribe button. Share my streams with people, with family and friends. Um, hit the subscribe button, share it. Please smash the like, leave comments afterwards. Help me with the algorithm. Help me to get up to 2,000 subscribers. You guys, please drop me some super chats. Um, Help me out because I really need it. And listen, I'm not gonna lie. I'm going back. I'm not gonna lie, folks. I mean, I wouldn't either anyway. But listen, I'm going back to Virginia at the end of this week. I got to get in my car and drive 1,000 miles, and I wouldn't be. I'm just telling you the truth. I need the gas money. I need the money to help me get back up there. I got to pay bills just like you guys do. I know that. Everybody out there works hard for your coin. I appreciate it. But I got to pay some bills. I got to get food when I get back. I got to drive. I got to drive 1,000 miles. I got to pay for gas. Hopefully, my car will be all right. I paid all that money getting down here, $2,000 to get the car fixed. So look, so I don't get stranded on the damn side of the highway again. So look, I sure would appreciate it. Anything you can do, drop me a fat coin. I really do appreciate it, you guys. All right, so let's look at some of the super chats. Let's see if we got any super chats tonight. And thank y'all for being here. Really appreciate you. Shouts out to our homeboy Jethro out there who sends $10 for please. Merry Christmas. Shouts out to my homeboy Jethro out there. Thank you for that $10 super chat. I really appreciate you. You are my brother. I love you so much. Thank you so much. That's an inside joke, but just to share with you guys, that comes from when we were raving a stream rave. We got to start doing that because then somebody wants to sponsor a movie watch along. We can put it up on the rave and then we can all watch it together in a gigantic chat. I got to figure out how we can do that. But we were watching an AJ stream with where he had Passio on there. And he said, listen, can you go back from the beginning? We're up against a hard break. We got 10 seconds. Say what you said from the very beginning. And then Passio started talking, and then he said, hold, please. And then he got to the break. It was funnier when we watched it. So thank you, Jeff. Appreciate you out there, homeboy. Shouts out, while we're talking about Passio, shouts out really to our homeboy, Mikhail at Tech Noir Graphics. He's our guy. So thank you so much for being here, you guys. I really appreciate you. All my mods, my wonderful friends out there. Shouts out to our homeboy Maddie out there who sends $5 for I'm digging the background. Very cozy. Yeah, very, this is my sister's wonderful house down here on the Gulf. And this right here, if you're wondering what this is a bar. This was my granddad's bar. Did he build this? Did he build this? I don't know if my papa built this. I think he did. But this was my granddad's bar, and my sister. It's actually don't tell her, but it's actually mine. No, but she's holding it for me. No, she can keep it. And so this is my sister's house. So thank you out there, Maddie. Really appreciate you for that $5. My sis drops $10. She says, "Nice house. You paying for dinner?" Okay. So shouts out to my sister out there. I love you so much. Thank you for that. Oh, look at that. Shouts out to our homeboy Tech Noir Graphics. You guys, that's Tech Noir, like noir films, TECHNOIR Tech Noir Graphics. At Instagram, our homeboy Mixkey, who drops $15 for we got the documents. We got the documents, folks. Look, we got stacks and stacks of documents. Look, I'm not bragging, but I've got the documents. Thank you, Mixie. I really appreciate you. You guys, everybody go to Tech Noir Graphics on Instagram. Go to my Instagram too. Dang, I always forget to plug that one. You guys, if you don't follow me on Instagram, go to my Instagram. It's Bays Lit Analyzer. You can also drop me emails at Mad Maximalism with 2 X's at gmail.com. Mad Max MAXXIMALISM. Mad Maximalism with 2 X's. Drop me an email and let me know what you want me to cover. Shouts out to our homeschool, our homegirl based homeschool mama, Rachel Wilson out there, our good friend. She says, another banger, my friend. Thank you for sharing your big brain with us. Well, I don't know about that, but thank you so much for saying that. And we can't wait till your next book comes out. Everybody get Rachel's book, Occult Roots of Feminism. And we hope to see her again soon. And we can't wait to get her channel. We need to get you on this channel too. And we can't wait to we've go back and watch my stream with Rachel early on in the life of this channel, The Crucible. We covered the play, The Crucible, and shouts out to The Crucible, right? Andy and Rachel's channel. Shouts out to BPF out there. Thank you so much. Appreciate you. Let me see if I can access the actual super chats. I think we got a couple super chats. So let me see here. Let's see. Give me a second, you guys. Talk amongst yourselves. Talk amongst yourselves while I try to access the super chats because I know I can get to them. You guys. By the way, while I'm trying to open this up on my new laptop here. Yo, what was the is the stream quality any better? What'd you think of the video? Was the video any good? The video quality better? Should be way better than older. It's gonna keep getting better. Oh, here we go. Shouts out to shouts out to Tatiana. Our girl Tatiana, who sends 2 US bucks and says it's not much, but I hope it helps. Well, you know what, Tatiana? I appreciate you so much. Thank you so much for that $2. That is a lot. And even giving me $1 or anything, I really appreciate that. So thank you so much. And it's the thought that counts, but also the fact that you sent $2 is amazing. So thank you. I really appreciate that. Um, let's see. Let's see. Eugene, hold on one second. Let's see. Eugene Goo. Eugene. Shouts out to Eugene. Tell me how to say it. Haley, I love your work. Ever read my fave novel from high school, Something Wicked This Way Comes by Bradbury? Also, when can we get some classic sci-fi like Ender's Game? Oh, good question. No, I haven't read Bradbury's novel. Uh I've read some Bradbury. But Bradbury really would be Jerry's, our homeboy Jerry at Exposing Powerful Lies. That would be really his purview. Jerry is the expert on, especially on sci-fi and things like Bradbury. And I appreciate that super chat. Thank you. Also, some classic sci-fi. We did Snow Crash. That's not really classic. That's sort of predictive future sci-fi. But it's kind of also an underground classic. I guess we could do Ender's Game. I have a copy of it somewhere, so I could cover Ender's Game. Yeah, it's a good suggestion. Thank you so much for that. Let's see. Shouts out to Tropes for that $5 super chat. Says nothing. Thank you so much. Really appreciate you. Um, Also, let's see. Shouts out to. Did we give a shout out to Hops last time? I think we did. And one more time. Oh, look at that. Amptown sends 149 super chat. Thank you so much, Amptown One. Really appreciate you out there. And also, again, I want to give a shout out to the people who supported me just over the weekend, coming up to now, and that would be. Hold on, let me close this window. Sorry, I'm trying to navigate through this. A new stream. Okay, that again, that would be our homeboy John Adams, who sends $100 and wants me to cover. Gave me a bunch of choices. The one that it popped out just for me to write it down is Wes Anderson. So I'll definitely be covering some Wes Anderson films. And John Adams, thank you so much, homeboy. Really appreciate you for that. Shouts out to my brother out there, the real John Connor. Love you, homeboy. Thank you so much for supporting me. That awesome super chat. Really, thank you so much. Um, I was trying to think of a Norm joke to do it. Um, what can I do? Richard Clock. Okay. Also, thank you to Vitali for that $20 again to get the car fixed up. Really, thank you so much. Really appreciate you. And also, again, shouts out to Presley Stutz and to Ryan. We're going to get those sponsor streams in here quick. We've had a lot going on, and then I had to come down here. So we're going to get those in promptly. I'll be doing a face in the crowd probably tomorrow. And I'll be doing, I'm looking for the book High Wind in Jamaica. And of course, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, the Tarantino book and film. We'll be doing that. Lots of stuff coming up, especially for the new year, you guys. We're going to be rolling into the new year. Again, I'll be driving back to VA on Friday. And so hopefully that'll give me, time. Hopefully I can get there and that'll give me time. So that Saturday, my homeboy Jerry and I can hook up and we can do our New Year's Eve stream. So that'll be fun. We're just gonna be rolling into the new year, 2020. What year is this? Okay, 2023. Sure. And I know it's gonna be better. So uh with God's grace, right? So thank you, everybody. Really appreciate you out there. Thank you for all the support. If you want to support me, you can support me anytime using the links in the channel description. You can use the about page. You can go to the videos, go to the click down, and you can support me with Venmo, Cash App, PayPal. Again, I really appreciate it. If you don't want me to read your name or your comment out here, just let me know. If you want to sponsor a stream, let me know. Because I really, really, really need your support. I'm sorry, that's 3 reallys. But, yeah, I could really use your support. If not, just to get more books, you guys. I'm trying to get to the bookstore. I'm trying to get to the, Dauphine Street, bookstore this weekend, or rather this week, or one of the bookstores down there in Nolens to get me a couple of these books. Another one that I wanna do, by the way, since I'm kinda shooting the shit here, another one that I wanna do is William Peter Blatty's, um, what's it called? Yeah, Killer Kane. What's the Killer Kane book called? Y'all, it's Twinkle Twinkle Killer Kane. Y'all heard of this book? Now, shouts out to Kim out there because the ninth configuration is the movie version of Twinkle Twinkle Killer Kane, but I'm looking for the book version because this deals with a lot of stuff what we're talking about. Of course, it's William Peter Blatty and it's The Exorcist, author and all that. But it's about a Phoenix program, a guy in the Phoenix program who kills with piano wire, and then come here, baby, come here. That's the dog. And then he comes back as a psychologist or a psychiatrist, right? So I gotta find a copy of that. I'm gonna read that one. Um, can you I can hear myself. All right, so that's about all I got, you guys. Um, I will see y'all at JD later on tonight. He's got a new series going on. So shouts out to our homeboy Jay over there at Jay Dyer at Jay's Analysis. Um, please check out my older streams. Check out the Passenger Cormac McCarthy stream. That's got 1,000 views on it now. It's pretty good. So does the Blood Meridian stream, and then of course the um, No Country for Old Men stream is the biggest one. So people seem to like Cormac McCarthy. Hope you enjoy this one. If you want me to do Cormac McCarthy, just let me know. Maybe I'll do Cities on the Plain or whatever. Um, and Amptown One says, "Can I see the puppy, please? Come here, dude. Come here. Yeah, I'm gonna bring him over here. Come on." Come here. Okay, let's say hi. This is my sister's baby. Mwah. This is my little Duke. That's a good boy. He's a good boy. That's my sister's baby. So that was Duke. He said hi to y'all. um, all right, you guys. That's about all I got. I will see y'all tonight. And I hope y'all have a good rest of the week. Good New Year. Yeah, I got a big hole in my sweater. Give me some, please drop me some coins so I can get my sweater replaced. That's embarrassing. I love y'all, and, that's about all I got. All right, that's about it, y'all. Peace. I love you. Peace.